So there's something under your chair. If you can pick it up, take a look at it.
Oh.
That's my mom.
Oh, look at me.
She's my mom.
Did my mom send you this?
So who is in this picture from left to right?
So it's me, my older brother, and my mom. It's in Seoul, it's in South Korea. This is my mom's, I think it was a sort of an outing with her students. She was a high school teacher in Korea. It was during one of those outings with her students, and she brought us along.
Do you remember anything about that day?
Absolutely nothing. I think I remember that I had this belt because it's in all the photos, my childhood photos. I just remember that the belt the buckle had a hologram. So it's I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood in Korea, but that one for some reason is very distinct.
Okay. So you were born in Korea, and then where'd you go? Where'd your family go?
So I was born in Incheon, South Korea. We moved very early on to Seoul. And then when I was 5 years old, we moved to Edmonton.
Okay.
So that's where we first landed in Canada. We moved here because Dad found a job in St. John's. And so in many respects, it was immense relief coming here because it meant a little bit more sort of stability and security, the possibility that we wouldn't have to move again. I also remember the place being different in the sense that there weren't many people like me that looked like me. So I remember growing up in my first few years here, those years being the most difficult, not realizing or not feeling that I belong necessarily. From junior high school up until maybe high school, university, I definitely felt like I didn't belong. I mean, those are formative years, right? So it might be sort of feelings that not most people have. I remember when I was in Edmonton, I felt, well, it was made clear to me by other people that I was different, right?
How?
I mentioned this before when I was in grade 7. There was a rhyme that people had about me, right? That it's not appropriate to say on TV or on radio, but race-based, fairly cruel, something I would be sort of mortified to talk about maybe even up until a few years ago. But yeah, that had a sort of a distinct sort of impact on me, and sort of helped me sort of realize that I was different, right, in certain contexts, right. And so when I came here, people didn't have that kind of rhyme when I was growing up, but it definitely sort of made me a bit more sort of careful about sort of what I did or what I said or sort of how I behaved. But I think I felt sort of most connected to sort of my own identity, and so most comfortable sort of, where I am when after grad school, when I started meeting different people and traveled to different places, especially, traveled to Korea, and sort of help understand sort of my own sort of identity and racial identity in particular. That's something that took a longer time for me, I guess, than others, just because of sort of, where I grew up, there being sort of few reference point in terms of what I felt I could be, I should be. As a sort of younger adult, I learned about, in linguistics, they call this term, there's a term called code switching. So it's when you shift mid-conversation between two languages. As I was growing up, I never felt comfortable speaking Korean. I could understand Korean perfectly because my mom spoke Korean to me, but I never spoke Korean. But as an adult, as I met more Korean people and became more comfortable and able to speak Korean, I realized that talking both in English and Korean at the same time was something that people like me did, and it was sort of a way to sort of understand my own identity. So that was for me, that was big, right?
How old were you when you started doing that?
Mid-20s maybe. So.
And how did it feel?
I felt empowering, right? It felt empowering, and that's also the time when I started also like feeling okay about sort of like eating Korean food, right?
How did you feel about eating Korean food growing up?
I didn't, right? My mom used to think that I didn't like Korean food, but I did. I secretly did, right? But I just never felt comfortable eating it. So
why?
Uh, it, I guess it was kind of one of the things that made me different, right?
That question, we touched on it earlier, where are you from? How do you feel when you get asked that question? What goes through your mind?
So up until very recently, I didn't feel anything, right? Up until very recently, I conditioned myself to answer that question with one word, right? I would say Korea because most times I would think that that's the answer people want to hear, right? But more recently, I've thought about sort of what that question means, and it's really a question that tries to get to identity, right? And identity is complex, and so it's not fair to use just one word to answer a question like that. And so the way I try to answer it now is through a very brief narrative, right?
Is Newfoundland home for you?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the place that sort of, educated me and that gave me my start in my career. But it's, I think, also one of many homes for me, right? And I think that speaks to sort of, people's backgrounds and lived experiences that can accommodate many things, not just, a singular sort of place or home.
Newfoundland has a reputation of being, well, one of the phrases I've heard a lot is friendly Newfoundland. Newfoundlanders are the most friendliest people you ever meet. What do you think about that slogan or that saying?
I think in many respects it's true. I mean, I remember, for example, on our first winter here, we had never seen snow like this before, and so we didn't have shovels. And I remember the first snowfall that we experienced. We had to use laundry hampers or baskets to move the snow because we just didn't know how. And our neighbor, I think they had 2 or 3 sons, and the whole family sort of cleared our driveway for us, right? And I'd never seen anything like that before, right? And day-to-day interactions, there are not very many places, for example, where when you're walking on the street, people just say hi to you, right? I've been to many places around the world, and that's not a very common thing. So in many respects, that's absolutely true, right? But I also think that sort of, being sort of friendly and welcoming has different layers. Saying hello or, sort of acknowledging that you want to welcome other people is one thing, but to truly sort of include them is different, right? And it takes more than just necessarily sort of words or behaviors.
What does it take?
It takes, in all aspects of society, real change to sort of acknowledge different values people might have, different sort of ways of thinking and knowing, different opinions. It's important to sort of affect social change, right, in a positive way. For people to sort of be mindful of what they communicate and how they communicate. Things like, for example, where are you from, right? What the meaning behind that is. Things like, for example, I probably don't get this as much as before, but I used to get a lot of statements like, or questions about whether or not I was a student, right? And so, and that could be a very innocuous sort of statement or question. And I used to think that, it's because maybe I look young, right? But it could also mean maybe because people who look like you, that's what they are, right? Maybe you couldn't be, for example, somebody in a place or position slightly other than that, right? I also remember maybe a couple of months ago, there was a couple of gentlemen that came to my apartment, and they wanted to talk about scripture, right? And they had a little brochure, and so I was looking through it as they were talking, and there was a picture there of heaven or paradise, right? And I remember looking at that picture and thinking, there's only white people in this picture, right? And I mentioned that to them, right? I said, there's nobody that looks like me in this photo. They didn't have a really sort of a clear response to that, but those are things that sort of I see. And then the other thing I think that's really important for society to improve and be better is just acknowledging the sort of the biases that we have. I think that's one of the issues when you say a place is very friendly and welcoming is that it sort of masks some of the biases or harm that can be caused on other people. And so it's important not to do that, not to be dismissive. I think one of the things that you've heard very recently in media or in social media is about Canada not being racist or Newfoundland and Labrador not being racist. But I mean, oftentimes those statements are made by people who don't have the experiences that qualify them to say that, right, or make such claims. So it's important, I think, not to dismiss those experiences by making general statements like that. And also, if you happen to say or do something, even if it's unintentional, that might make people feel like they're excluded, don't be defensive about it, right? Just to sort of listen and acknowledge and, try to respect that person's opinion and try to do things differently next time. I think that's what I thought a lot about after, talking to you and thinking about sort of what does it take for society to change, right? I think it really takes individuals to change, right?
So looking back to Andrew in that picture over there, and to Andrew now, how do you feel about the journey you've been on so far?
I don't have many regrets. When I was younger, like I felt really out of place. It was the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged was profound to me, right? It was the only thing that mattered, right? And I'm not sure right now if it's the case that I feel like I belong more, or the need to belong is less important to me. But I definitely feel better about myself. Those experiences that I had growing up sort of made me sort of, I don't know if this is the right way of saying it, but sort of wise about sort of how I sort of deal and cope with things, because it's probably not a good thing for kids to sort of experience some of those sort of things that sort of I experienced, but it did make me a lot more resilient. And I feel lucky also to have grown up in different places and sort of experienced different things. And I feel a more whole person because of all of that. I also think that there are some things that I have to unlearn that, talking to you has sort of helped me sort of realize I need to be a bit more proactive about. So one of the things is like the fact that I'm not a very social person. I mean, some of that could be innate, but I think some of that's sort of also learned behavior, and it's something that really I should try to address, because I don't know if it's necessarily the case that there's something that I need to be afraid of when if I sort of run into people and think that they're like something bad might happen, right? Because some bad things happened before when I was younger, right?
Feel good about that? How are you feeling?
Oh, good, yeah. I didn't expect this, but Are you gonna take this, or?
No, I don't want to keep a picture of you as a child.
Thank you.